There is a moment right before someone decides whether to trust you, betray you, or fear you. And in that single moment, the only thing that protects you is one skill almost nobody has. The skill of being unreadable, not silent, not cold, unreadable. And the people who master it are never the loudest in the room, yet somehow they are the ones everyone quietly fears. Think about the last time you truly felt exposed. Maybe you showed someone your excitement and they used it to manipulate you. Maybe you showed your anger and they used it against you in front of others. Maybe you showed your pain and instead of comfort you got mockery, or worse, silence and distance. That is the moment most people never recover from, because in that moment you learned something brutal about the world. You learned that every emotion you reveal becomes a weapon in someone else's hand. Machiavelli understood this long before modern psychology gave it fancy names. He watched kings fall not because they lacked power, but because they lacked control over their own faces, their own words, their own reactions. He saw men destroyed, not by their enemy's strength, but by their own transparency. Because when people can read you, they no longer need to guess. They know exactly which button to press to make you angry, which words will make you insecure, which silence will make you beg for approval. And once someone knows how to control your emotions, they no longer see you as a person, they see you as a tool. This is the dark truth nobody prepares you for. Kindness without boundaries gets exploited. Honesty without discretion gets punished. Emotion without discipline gets used as a leash. The world does not reward those who wear their hearts openly. It rewards those who make others work to understand them, because uncertainty creates respect and predictability creates control, but not your control, someone else's. Have you ever noticed how the calmest person in a heated argument always seems to win? Not because they had the best argument, but because their face gave away nothing. Their silence created doubt. Their stillness created discomfort. And discomfort, in the minds of others, often looks like power. That is not an accident. That is a skill. Machiavelli believed that appearing predictable was more dangerous than being weak, because predictability invites manipulation, while unpredictability invites caution. Now here is where most people get it wrong. They think being unreadable means becoming cold, distant, emotionless, a stone-faced version of themselves that feels nothing and shares nothing. But that is not mastery. That is hiding. And hiding is not the same as controlling. Machiavelli never taught men to disappear. He taught them to choose exactly what the world was allowed to see. There is a massive difference between a man who has no emotions and a man who has emotions but refuses to let them control the moment. One is empty, the other is dangerous, in the way calm water hides a deadly current beneath its surface. Marty. Yourself something, honestly. How many times have you overreacted to something, only to regret it the moment your emotions settled? How many times has your anger given someone information they later used against you? How many times has your desperation shown, and the other person suddenly gained the upper hand simply because they saw what you truly wanted? This is why so many people feel powerless in relationships, in workplaces, in friendships, not because they lack value, but because they expose their hunger too early. And hunger, once seen, invites control. Machiavelli's brutal lesson was this: it is not cruelty that destroys men, it is exposure. The moment your enemy, your rival, or even someone close to you understands exactly how to hurt you, they will use it, not always with malice, but with convenience. Humans are opportunistic by nature. If a door is open, most will walk through it, even if they never intended to break in. So the real question is not whether people are good or bad. The real question is whether you leave your doors open. This is where the deeper twist appears. Being unreadable is not about protecting yourself from enemies. It is about protecting yourself from people who love you, but do not yet know how to handle your truth. A father who never learned to read his own pain teaches his son to hide his emotions too, not out of coldness but survival. A woman who once revealed her insecurities to a partner only to have them repeated back to her in an argument months later learns to build walls not out of bitterness, but wisdom. This is the tragedy Machiavelli captured about human nature. Trust is rarely broken by strangers. It is broken by people who were once safe, and this leads to the sharpest truth in this entire lesson. Being unreadable does not mean trusting no one. It means trusting selectively, deliberately, and with full awareness of the cost if that trust is misused. The world does not punish emotion. It punishes emotional carelessness. There is nothing weak about crying, raging, fearing, or hoping. The weakness comes from doing it in front of people who have not earned the right to witness it. Now think about the people who intimidate you the most, not with threats, but with presence. The ones who never explain themselves, the ones who never chase validation, the ones who respond to insults with silence instead of anger. Why does that unsettle people so deeply? Because human beings are wired to seek reaction. We test people to understand them. We provoke to measure control. And when someone refuses to give us that reaction, our brain interprets it as danger, not because they are dangerous, but because we cannot predict them. Machiavelli knew that fear is not built through violence alone, it is built through mystery. A man whose next move cannot be predicted becomes a man other men hesitate to challenge. But here is the twist within the twist, the part almost nobody talks about. Being unreadable is not just protection from others, it becomes protection from your own impulsiveness. When you train yourself not to react instantly, you buy yourself the one thing weak men never have: time. Time to think. Time to choose your response instead of being enslaved by your emotions. And in that pause, in that terrifying, quiet space between provocation and reaction, real power is born. Not power over others, power over yourself. This is where the deepest layer of Machiavelli's philosophy reveals itself. Being unreadable was never about deception for its own sake. It was about survival in a world where honesty without strategy becomes self-destruction. He did not teach men to lie. He taught them to withhold, because withholding is not dishonesty, it is discipline. The tongue that speaks everything it feels eventually says something it cannot take back. But the tongue that waits, that studies, the room before speaking becomes a weapon precision-built for the right moment. So ask yourself right now, without lying to yourself, how many times have your words, your emotions, your desperation cost you power in a moment you couldn't undo? And how different would your life look if, instead of reacting, you had simply paused? Let silence create the uncertainty that protects you. This is not about becoming manipulative. This is about refusing to be predictable prey in a world full of quiet hunters. Because here is the final, brutal truth Machiavelli whispered across centuries. The world does not fear the strong man who shouts his power. It fears the calm man who says nothing, yet somehow always seems to know more than everyone else in the room. Unreadability is not a mask. It is armor. And in a world that profits from your predictability, silence is not weakness. It is the sharpest weapon you were never taught to use. Choose carefully what the world sees of you, because once they know exactly how to break you, they will not hesitate. Guard your reactions, like you guard your life, because in truth, they are the same thing.